Welcome to a new episode from Perfect English Podcast. Today we're going to learn some vocabulary that is very useful if we want to talk about food. And food is a big part of our lives and a big part of our conversations in any language we want. So how do we describe the tastes of food, the flavors, the appearance, the presentation, the quality of food? How do we describe specific things that has to do with eating out? How do we do that? Let's get to it and let's learn how we can do that. Now first, we'll talk about flavors and tastes. We'll talk about some adjectives we can use to describe flavors and tastes. I have an example here for you. I love spicy food, especially curries. The hotter, the better. My sister prefers mild curries. So in this sentence, we have the words spicy and hot. And that is when we talk about food that has a lot of chili, a lot of hot chili. Something that makes you sweat when you eat it. Some people love spicy food. They love hot food. But other people can't stand hot food or spicy food, and they prefer mild food. So here, when we say hot and mild or spicy and mild, we're talking about two opposites. Now, mild means not hot. Especially in this sentence, we talked about curries. And curries are usually hot. But here we said my sister prefers mild curries. And mild means not hot or spicy. So, the first adjectives we learn here to talk about flavors and tastes are the words spicy, hot, and mild. Now let's move to another example and learn some more. Those cakes are too sugary for me. They have a sickly taste. Obviously, sugary is very easy to understand. Sugary means has a lot of sugar. Like when we say the word salty, that means has a lot of salt. But maybe the new word for you is sickly. When we said in the sentence they have a sickly taste. So what do you think that is related to? Do you think it is related to more sugar or more salt? Obviously, the context here tells us that we're talking about sugary cakes. So sickly, it is not only a lot of sugar, it is too much sugar. So some people can't stand all that sugar in one dish. And if it has all this sugar, maybe it's a little bit more than sugary. You can say sickly. They have a sickly taste. Now let's take a look at another example. They had some delicious savory snacks at the party. They were very Moorish. Now we have two adjectives here that I would like to focus on. The first one is savory and the second one is Moorish. Now when we say a savory snack, what does it mean? Well, savory is pleasant, slightly salty, or with herbs. And usually in restaurants or in cooking, they have these two main types of cooking. Savory dishes and desserts. Desserts are sweet, obviously, and savory are salty dishes. But we don't usually say salty dishes because salty means they have a lot of salt. Savory is the word you want to use because it means pleasant, slightly salty, and or with herbs. And what about the other word, Moorish? We said here they were very Moorish. What is the meaning of Moorish? If you describe food as Moorish, you mean that this food has a pleasant taste, so you want to eat more. And there comes the word Moorish. And that's not all. Let's take a look at another example. The breakfast buffet was very poor quality. The coffee tasted bitter and the fruit juice was sour. So here we have the words bitter and sour. Now sour means sharp and often unpleasant taste like a lemon and not sweet. And bitter means with an unpleasantly sharp taste. Of course, the coffee is bitter and it tastes bitter. But when I say the coffee tasted bitter, that means more than usual and I didn't like it this way. And when I talked about the fruit juice and I said it was sour, now the fruit juice is supposed to have a sour taste in it. But if it is sour, that means it is bad. Now, bitter and sour are tastes that we can find in a lot of dishes. But the most important thing is that they should be balanced with other flavors, not to make them too bitter or too sour, and so they become negative flavors. And now for the last example, the food on the plane was bland and tasteless. It was like eating cardboard. Bland food, tasteless food, is food that has no flavor at all. Now, of course, the opposite of tasteless or bland is tasty, and we can say delicious. Tasty food has a good taste or good flavors. Tasteless food or bland food has no flavor at all. So that is definitely not a good adjective to use with good food. So just to remind you, we talked about hot and spicy food, and the opposite of that is mild. We talked about bland, which is very little flavor and it is rather negative. We talked about salty for food that has a lot of salt, sugary for food that has a lot of sugar, sickly for too much sugar, savory for pleasant, slightly salty, sour, that means sharp, often unpleasant taste like a lemon and not sweet, bitter with an unpleasantly sharp taste, tasty, something that has a good taste or flavor, and tasteless, something that has no flavor at all, and moreish, having a pleasant taste so you want to eat more. So we're done talking about flavors and tastes, the adjectives that we can use for flavors and tastes. Let's talk about appearance, presentation, and quality of food. Now we can say this meat is overcooked, overdone, or undercooked or underdone. Now obviously when you want to cook meat or anything else, you want to cook it right. You want to cook it to perfection, whatever this dish or component of a dish is. So remember, the meat can be raw, that means not cooked at all. It can be undercooked, that means not cooked enough. And it can be overcooked or overdone, and that means cooked too much. So the aim is to cook the meat to perfection. Of course, we're not chefs here and we don't know where that perfection point is. But if you want to describe how the meat is cooked or how anything else is cooked, you have the words for that. So that was about cooking and meat. What about fruit and vegetables? Let's take a look at this example. I'm afraid this mango is a bit unripe. They're not really in season at the moment. So let's take a look at the first word. We said the mango is a bit unripe. When we say unripe about some fruit or vegetables, we mean they're not ready to eat. They should have stayed a little bit longer on the tree or wherever they come from and not picked that soon. But they were picked ahead of time, they were picked early, and they are not ready to eat. They are a bit unripe. The opposite of that is ripe. And of course you can call ripe or unripe for any kind of vegetables or fruits. Bananas, tomatoes, whatever you want. But what about the second expression that is very interesting? Is that they're not really in season at the moment. Now, when something is in season, that means it is being produced, it's ready and available in the market, because this is the time when they harvest this kind of produce. But in this case, they're not really in season. The mangoes are not really in season. And maybe that is why they are unripe. So you learned about unripe and in season. Let's take a look at another example and learn something new. This butter has gone off. I think we should throw it out. Now, what does it mean when you say something has gone off? Now, this butter has gone off. That means it's not good to eat because it is too old. So a lot of things can go off. In our example, it was the butter and it has to be thrown out. Let's take another example. I don't feel like anything heavy. I just want something light. A salad would be fine. So here also we use the words heavy and light to talk about food. Light food, something like salad would be light usually. Heavy food would be food with a lot of fat, maybe a lot of butter, or some food that is fried. We can call this food heavy. So we have the words heavy and light to describe meals or dishes. But that's not all. We can say British cooking can be very stodgy. Stodgy is S-T-O-D-G-Y. And that means heavy, but it has a little bit more in the meaning. Stodgy is heavy, hard to digest food. So British cooking can be very stodgy. We're not saying all of it is stodgy, but some of it can be very stodgy. Now, what about another example? Zoe will only buy organic fruit and vegetables. Now, when we say organic fruit and vegetables, that means grown without artificial chemicals. When something is grown without artificial chemicals, we call it organic. And now for another example, we should try to have a balanced diet without too much or too little of any particular thing. Now, a balanced diet means you should eat everything: carbs, fruits, vegetables, meat, etc. Everything you want, but not too much and not too little. So that is what we mean by a balanced diet. And now, a diet of junk food can cause long-term health problems. Junk food is food that is unhealthy but easy and quick to eat. We have another kind of food that is usually not good for your health, and that is processed food. Processed food is food that has been treated with chemicals to preserve it or give it extra color or taste. So, I'll go back quickly to remind you of the words we talked about here, and these words have to do with the appearance, presentation, and the quality of food. These words are overcooked, overdone, undercooked, and underdone. We said that about the meat. About the fruit, the mango, we said unripe, and they're not in season. We said the butter has gone off, means it's too old. We talked about food that is heavy and food that is light, dishes that are heavy, dishes that are light. We talked about some cooking that can be stodgy, heavy and hard to digest. We talked about organic fruit and vegetables. These are grown without artificial chemicals. We talked about a balanced diet without too much or too little of any particular thing. We talked about junk food that is unhealthy but easy and quick to eat. And we talked about processed food that has been treated with chemicals to preserve it or give it extra color or taste. And now let's talk about eating out. Now, at most good restaurants, you usually have to book a table or make a reservation beforehand. Now, obviously, book a table, make a reservation. You have to call the restaurant before you go, tell them that you are coming at a specific time so that they keep a table for you. That is the meaning of booking a table or making a reservation. They don't let anybody else use the table at the time you want to come. Now, if something happens or if you are ill, you may need to cancel the booking or the reservation. Now, in the UK, a meal in a restaurant is typically 3 courses. A starter, a main course, then a dessert. Now, a starter is a light snack or an appetizer. The main course is the main dish you want to eat. And then there is the dessert, which is the sweet dish that you eat at the end of your meal. Now, you can often order side dishes. Side dishes are smaller dishes alongside the main course. For example, extra vegetables, extra rice, some kind of salad, etc. These are not main dishes. These are not main courses. These are side dishes. You can order those as well. Now, some restaurants may have a set menu. If restaurants have a set menu, that means a selection of dishes at a fixed price. You pay that fixed price and you have the 3-course meal that is set by the restaurant. Or you can order individual dishes called ordering a la carte. And that means you don't have to pay a fixed price. You can order whatever you like and at the end you pay for what you ordered. And restaurants often have specials advertised on a board. Now, specials in a restaurant are dishes only available on that specific day you're in the restaurant. And that's why they put it on a board. And restaurants often cater for vegetarians, non-meat eaters, and vegans. Now, the difference between vegetarians, non-meat eaters, and vegans is very simple. Vegetarians are people who do not eat meat or fish. Non-meat eaters, people who do not eat meat, but they're not vegetarians. And vegans are people who don't eat or use any animal products such as meat, fish, eggs, cheese, or leather. So here In a restaurant or eating out, we talked about booking a table, making a reservation, canceling the booking or the reservation. We talked about the meals in restaurants that are usually a starter, a main course, and a dessert. You can order side dishes. And we talked about some restaurants that may have set menus, a selection of dishes at a fixed price, or other restaurants where you can order individual dishes a la carte. We talked about specials in restaurants, these things they do on that specific day. And we talked as well about vegetarians, non-meat eaters, and vegans. So that was all for today. I hope you found the food information I shared with you important, and I hope you can use these words in your conversations to come. This is your host Danny saying thank you very much for listening to another episode from Perfect English Podcast. I will see you again tomorrow in another episode.